Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our media availability. Apologies for the delay. Council meeting ran a little bit over time, but we're here today with Adam Laughlin and Mayor Iveson to give you an update on the proceedings of Council today. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks everybody for joining us. City Council has completed its discussions on the updates to the 2020 municipal budget. I'll be turning over the podium to the Mayor shortly. But first I will confirm the decisions that Council has made and outline what they mean for taxpayers. The budget has been adjusted to offset the impacts of lost revenue and increased expenditures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This impact is estimated at $164 million by the middle of September, and it would have meant a 7.6% increase to the municipal tax levy to offset the tax-supported revenue reductions of $127.5 million. That shortfall is primarily balanced by reducing expenses and reducing transfers from the operating budget to the capital budget. Also, the Government of Alberta has reduced education tax this year. Combined with the municipal portion, residential taxpayers will see a 0% increase, and non-residential taxpayers will see a 2% decrease. For a typical homeowner in Edmonton that's valued at $387,000, this is a $28 decrease on their tax bill. Across the city administration, we are tightening our belts. Expense reductions are a combination of project adjustments and deferrals, vacancy management, temporary layoffs, and reducing spending on consultants and training. The city's capital construction program is expected to proceed as originally planned from 2020 to 2022. This will prevent job losses in the construction sector, putting more dollars into Edmonton's economy. More details about our construction season will be announced in the coming days. Unfortunately, some major projects will be delayed until next year. That includes the bus network redesign, on-demand transit service pilot, and the rollout of the waste services card program. Property taxes will be mailed on May 21st, and we will publicly confirm what happens when that happens. As is the case every year, taxes are due at the end of June. This year, however, late payment penalties will not be charged until September 1st, and this applies to both the education and municipal portions of the tax bill for residential and non-residential properties. We believe this is an important option for those who have been financially affected by that pandemic. Even so, I have a special request for property owners. If you are able to pay your taxes, please do so. You will be keeping the city services running. And now I'll turn it over to Mayor Iveson for his comments.
I'd like to once again thank our interpreters, Kevin Culp and Amanda Omoth.
Well, thanks everyone for staying a bit late. I told Adam he looks sharp, and he said his wife cut his hair for him, which is great. Sarah's going to take a thwack at mine one of these days here to build on the clip she gave me the other day. So we're all shaving as tightly as we can here, including with the budget. And as Adam mentioned, we agreed to an overall, what works out to an average 2% tax decrease for businesses in Edmonton and an average of 0% for the residential properties. Now this is truly momentous, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But I do want to emphasize individual properties will fluctuate. Some apartments may be up, for example, but we do believe in our forecasting that the average home in Edmonton will be actually down a bit overall by about $28 is how it will wash through. So I do want to acknowledge that there was a lot of hard work to arrive at this budget and overall tax bills for 2020, which again will be flat relative to last year for most residents and down for businesses here in Edmonton. It took all hands on deck, commitments to reductions from council office budgets, reductions in education property tax from the province that created some room, and hundreds of hours of staff analysis, also some very tough cuts, and even where necessary, layoffs and projects being delayed. So add in absorbing extra costs that we've experienced because of the Government of Alberta budget cuts not that long ago, as well as COVID-19, and it really is miraculous that we could get the number down this low, the lowest that it's been in decades. Now, it sends the right signal to businesses that we understand how much they're hurting and that we wanted to cut them a further break at this time to help them survive in our city. A city does rely on its businesses to drive employment and the economy, and a big part of quality of life as well. So this represents about $11 million worth of tax relief for business, and that's what this tax move provides, which is a good start. Now, we will still be looking at additional opportunities to provide relief to businesses. We do have within the budget an additional $10 million roughly set aside for other business relief and economic recovery and economic diversification work that we're still developing. Now, if we do eventually get financial aid from provincial or federal governments, it's my hope that we'll be able to pass on more specific and targeted relief than a general bit of tax relief to businesses, and that targeted relief can be focused on those who've been hit particularly hard by this pandemic. Though pretty much every business has felt the impacts in some way. And we do want to help our businesses now so that we can help insulate and protect Edmonton's economic future. So this is a first step, and I understand that we'll need to do more for businesses. But cities, of course, have very limited tools. We've really started to see this quite starkly in the last few weeks. And in fact, property tax is one of our only tools to provide relief on top of the deferral of utility bills and the odd targeted grant program. But this is why we'll continue to push for our federal and provincial partners to help us provide the relief that Edmontonians need. So we're still facing the financial pressures of COVID-19, and we won't truly know the full impacts until months from now. But I do hope that today's news helps to alleviate some of the pressures people and particularly businesses are facing here in our city. Now, speaking of rebounding from COVID-19, Council today also agreed to form 4 new Council initiatives that will focus on our recovery and our relaunch plans. These will take the place of all of the other existing Council initiatives for right now. And the 4 initiatives are around focus on a social and healthy city, on environment and climate, on urban places and the shape and growth of our city, and of course, regional economic prosperity. These happen to be the 4 strategic priorities of the city's strategic plan, and we're building our recovery and relaunch efforts around the city's existing strategic thinking, partly so that we can revalidate it and test what assumptions may have changed and test our priorities in light of this massive disruption to our community, economy, and way of life. So it's our hope that these initiatives will take the lens of how COVID-19 has impacted each of these areas of the city's operations and planning, what changes to city plans may need to be made going forward. And Council is committed to helping Edmontonians bounce back from COVID-19 so that we can ensure we build on our strongest asset and really the heart of our community, which is our people. And so, and I appreciate that most members of Council have stepped forward to take on these initiatives and support this work and activate their expertise and their networks to help problem solve in our community. So a big thank you to members of Council for stepping forward. Now with that, happy to take any questions.
I'll go to the media questions in this order. Vinesh first, please. A question and a follow-up if you need it.
Hi there, Mayor, thank you for your time. I'm just wondering, obviously I just want to focus on the municipal portion. You stressed about the need to help businesses, but is there any concern that, homeowners are kind of picking up the slack, with respect that it's going to be a decrease when combined with the education taxes, but still it was 2.08 initially, now it's 2.5. Any concern about this, the optics, I guess?
And the provincial property tax is going down by 7%, and so the overall tax bill for the average homeowner will still actually go down. Now, it's fair to observe that it could have gone down by a bit more if we hadn't shifted the burden a little bit from business on to residential taxpayers. But a number of councillors who've had a chance to talk to constituents about this and think about it since I proposed it a couple of days ago, are hearing from Edmontonians how much they support our businesses, how concerned they are about the impact this is having on our business community, and that there was broad support to allow that shifting of the burden to the tune of really a few $1,000,000 in the grand scheme of things in order to target a little bit of extra relief to business, and recognizing that overall the tax bill, thanks to the province's moves, will be flat or down for almost all taxpayers. Again, we expect that some apartments, just because of the way the assessment cycle works, which is not something we can vary on the fly, may see a small increase overall, but they would have anyway, even if we hadn't made this shift between the residential and non-residential tax classes.
Thanks, Vinesh. Did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. So just, with regards to 2021, are you concerned that if provincial education taxes go up, I'm not inferring that they will, but if that happens, could there be, for lack of a better term, a bit of a double whammy for residential and non-residential in 2021?
There can be double whammies if you make unsustainable decisions, and there have been a number of unsustainable proposals, which, and Council, I want to give them credit, did not adopt any unsustainable measures going forward. So this is actually something that will permanently shift the balance between residential and non-residential to the tune of about 1%, unless or until Council in the future chooses to change it. So it's now independent of what the province does, and whatever the province does with education property tax next year will be whatever the province does. It will collect it on their behalf. That may or may not leave any room for any tax policy shifts like that in the future. It was sort of a unique opportunity here since that burden was falling, to be able to use some room it created by the province's tax requisition dropping off to move the tax burden between residents and business without overall taxes going up for the average residential property.
Thank you. I'll go to Natasha next. Natasha from the CBC, are you there?
Hi, yes I am. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the mayor this one since he's at the stand now about the timing of this. We've known that the supplemental budget was coming, and several councillors today expressed frustration that there wasn't enough time to debate this change in separating the residential and the non-residential. So why did this just come up 2 days ago?
Well, I was trying to do a little bit of algebra on Monday and figured out that we could do this shifting because of the room that was available. So it was just something that emerged on Monday, and rather than force the issue on Monday, in fact, which was my initial thought, I wanted to give administration an opportunity to verify all the numbers and put it in a concise and understandable format, which they were able to do yesterday and explain it better than I could, so that the merits could be seen by the public and we could get some public feedback. So I think we're trying to be nimble and take advantage of opportunities on the one hand, while trying to still give a maximum opportunity for council to debate the merits of given initiatives. And I think there was plenty of opportunity to do that. We spent several hours discussing it today, so I think it was very thoroughly vetted, and obviously most members of council were supportive of the approach in the end.
Before you ask a follow-up, Natasha, could I please ask the media to mute if you're not asking a question? We're getting some feedback here and an echo sensation. Thanks. Natasha, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. And I'm not sure if this would be for the mayor to answer or Adam. I'm just wondering about that, when you look at the overall municipal increase of 1.3 and whether option 1 was chosen or option 2, can you give me a sense now that the 2.5% lies with the residential, then which homeowners really are going to be picking up that 1.3%?
So the 1.3% works out to be about $22 million. And that could have gone roughly equally to business and residents, which would have been option 1, or it can all go on to residents, which was option 2, which is what council asked for. And again, because provincial education property taxes were going down, there was an opportunity to do that. The numbers worked out that the overall tax bill for residential property taxpayers would still be flat across all residential properties. Again, there's shifting between them. So if a house has gone up in value through the assessment process, then its share of the overall tax base would go up. But that's a different calculation that we go through every January when the assessment notices go out. So people would have a sense, but that's an independent variable of the variable that council manipulated today, which is the distribution of the tax burden between residential properties on one hand and non-residential properties on the other. So the given share of a given household will now be determined by the fluctuation of its property, as it is every year, on a market value assessment basis. The city assessor is nodding, so I got that right.
Thank you, Natasha. We'll go to Dustin Cook next. Dustin, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Building off of Vanessa's question, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering what your message would be to residents who are struggling and see the relief being given here to businesses, but maybe very well could have been laid off from one of these businesses and don't have a job right now and need to pay these property taxes. What would your message be to them about this decision today?
Well, I think the feedback has been that while we understand every household has been affected in one way or another by this crisis, that though we've seen significant layoffs, most people still have a job. People who aren't employed right now but are collecting pensions are still collecting pensions, or even if their investments have been impacted, their RIFs and other mechanisms are still paying out for them. So there's still positive cash flow for most households, and even in the most troubling circumstances, there are federal aid programs and provincial aid programs supporting household liquidity and people's ability to pay their essential bills, including property taxes. The measures to support businesses are not as universal. And the impact, I think, has been much deeper to business. And certainly for someone who's lost a job in a business that's struggling right now, measures the city can take to support that business's recovery so that person can maybe get their job back a little bit faster by supporting business confidence in the city. That's going to mean more to both the business and the person in terms of re-entering the labor market. So strategically, the signal we want to send is confidence in our business community, recognizing that most households will still be able to pay and that most households' bill is still actually going to be flat or lower than last year.
Did you have a follow-up, Dustin?
I do, yes. Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if you can clarify the funding for this option to become feasible. It's $1.6 million from pay-as-you-go. What projects will be missing out here because of this?
So the funding is really two parts. The $1.56 million reduction to pay-as-you-go is discretionary dollars that we connect through property taxes normally to fund infrastructure projects. We do hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure work with pay-as-you-go dollars in the average 4-year infrastructure cycle. So taking a few million dollars out of that represents less than a 1% reduction in the city's discretionary infrastructure budget, and that's still only less than 10% of the overall infrastructure budget, which includes a lot of non-discretionary grant funding for things like LRT, for example. So it does represent a small erosion of the city's ongoing discretionary infrastructure funding. I'm hopeful that some of the stimulus dollars that we'll receive will help top that up, and that's really absorbable in the grand scheme of a $10 billion infrastructure plan over the 4-year cycle. So all that did really was take it from 1.4 to 1.3, and then getting to 1.3 is what made it possible when you swap it from being evenly or close to even over business and residential. If you put that all to residential and have homeowners who are, again, have been impacted but are perhaps in a more resilient position to pay their bills, that we were able to get the residential to zero and get the business to -2 overall when put in combination with the education property tax impacts for this year.
Thank you. We're going to go next to Matt Woodman of CTV. Matt, go ahead, please. Matt, can you hear us? I'm going to go then to Scott Johnston, who joined us. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can you characterize the conversations with Ottawa and the province on where this extra money, this revenue stream is going to come from?
Well, nothing we've done today is dependent on any senior order of government. Cities across the country have had to make really hard, and across Alberta, I was in touch with some of the mayors of the other cities in Alberta today about layoffs and other very challenging decisions we've had to make to tighten our belts against falling revenues. So we've done all of that on our own without any provincial or federal aid so far. We've all made assumptions about how bad this is going to be, and we've made our assumptions based on impacts out to September. Obviously, if this gets worse and if there's a second wave, or depending how ratcheted and restricted relaunch programs and reopen programs are, that the impact could be deeper to many cities. So we've made the best assumptions that we can to build a budget right now, which I think are prudent. But so far, every decision we've made here doesn't depend on aid from senior orders of government. We know where we would cut next, which starts to be infrastructure and starts to be further layoffs, both of which would be counter-cyclical to, or pro-cyclical to the economic challenges that we're seeing here. So mayors are increasingly calling on provinces and the federal government to work together. In terms of the receptivity, I understand the federal government's first answer is, aren't you creatures of the province? And the province's first answer is, we have no money. What have you asked the feds for lately? And quite frankly, the premiers and territorial leaders and the federal government need to sort that out. We would very much like to be part of that conversation. We've for a long time wanted local government voices and Indigenous government voices to work collectively and collaboratively with provincial and federal governments to solve practical challenges that we deal with on the ground every day in communities. And perhaps this will be the place where that finally happens in a way that meets our needs and allows us to support residents, support businesses, and support the continuity of essential public services. But so far we're caught falling through the usual jurisdictional cracks, and but I think our message is starting to get through that there is an urgent and yawning challenge facing municipalities, just like many other large and essential organizations and employers, and that some measure of support will be required. We've begun to tighten our belts far beyond what I would have ever thought possible or feasible, and there are limits to that will start to have serious economic consequences and serious business continuity, and frankly long-term workplace and culture consequences for our organization that we'd like to avoid.
Scott, did you have a follow-up by any chance?
Just a quick one. What do we read into the you no longer having to be on a 4:30 call tomorrow? Is that something bad news, or is that just business?
Oh no, that the calls with the federal government are moving around, subject to the availability of ministers of the Crown, and so we're having to juggle schedules. We're still in regular contact with the federal government about all of these issues, and we continue to have open access and dialogue. Like I said, the first issue seems to be jurisdictional. I think there's sympathy for our plight, but there is the usual Canadian constitutional complexity manifesting in this situation, for better or for worse. But no, don't read anything into that. I think this next call has been rescheduled till Monday.
One last call from Matt Woodman. Matt, do you have a question?
Hi there. Yeah, Mayor, I'm just wondering, obviously we're waiting on the province to learn what the relaunch plan is for COVID, for the economy. I'm just wondering how you feel Edmontonians have been doing so far in terms of social distancing. I know the Premier said that could factor into relaunching because there's been so fewer cases here in Edmonton compared to Calgary.
Well, I think there are a number of factors that have affected the Calgary numbers that are unique to their circumstances and independent of social distancing measures, which are fairly parallel between the two communities. I think I will say Edmontonians have been phenomenally compliant. Businesses that are open have been phenomenally innovative as well as compliant, and that culture in our community of wanting to look out for each other is working well. I'm cracking up a little bit because I am really proud of our city. I'm really proud of people, really proud of frontline workers and the work they're doing, really proud of entrepreneurs and their innovative approaches to continuing to serve people's needs during this time, and really proud of Edmontonians themselves. So I think that puts us in good stead to take advantage of new privileges as they are re-granted to us around the public health orders, because we've shown that we can obey and embrace the spirit and letter of these rules to protect public health, and hopefully that will be helpful to our relaunch and recovery.
Matt, did you have a follow-up question at all?
Yeah, is there a strategy or an approach you'd like to see the province take when it comes to relaunching the economy?
I think the most important message I have to the government of Alberta about their plans to relaunch the economy is work with your local government partners. We are so important to the implementation of particular orders, and we've had really good collaboration about the state of local emergency and public health, but on the economic development, particularly economic resiliency and long-term diversification, we've been doing a ton of work in Alberta's larger centers, particularly Edmonton and Calgary, around long-term technology-based economic diversification and long-term job creation in a variety of different areas of the economy, but particularly health innovation, more relevant than ever, artificial intelligence and big data, very relevant to solving challenges like we're dealing with right now. And so work with the cities. Don't tell the cities what the plan is when you're done. We, and not just the city council, but our business community and our thought leaders have an awful lot to contribute, and please engage us early and often in all of that work.
I'm mindful of the hour. It's 6:30. Is there one last wrap-up question from anyone? I see nothing. Thank you very much for participating. We'll speak with you soon. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.